All right, so welcome back into the Metaverse today. We're going to be, of course, doing our live stream and diving into the whole topic of not only Minecraft, but also what's happening with Sony and how NFTs are playing into the space. Whether or not NFTs have a future in the gaming sector, we'll dive into all that good stuff. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to Metaverse Insider. As you guys know, we've been doing these breakdowns with a handful of guests, and we had such a fun time with Jonny over from Crypto Banner and Hustlepedia. We said, hey, Jonny, can you come back in on the show? Let's break down some of the updates and some of the news. We're going to try to do this on a monthly basis for a few runs and get you guys in. So, Jonny, welcome into the show again, man.
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much for having me back. I know we had a blast last time, and we could go on for days about the metaverse, crypto, gaming, etc. So happy to be back on with you.
It's going to be fun. There's a lot to cover today. Of course, for you guys, make sure and smash the like button. If you guys like Hustlepedia, if you're not following his channel, make sure to check him out. We'll put a link in the description below if you're catching this out after the live stream. And also, make sure and put your questions in over the side. We're going to try to take a few toward the end of the show, and we'll try to get to those best we can. This first story I want to kind of jump to, which is world's best-selling video game announces the ban on NFTs, that being Minecraft. And of course, their whole play has been around this whole inclusivity issue. There's scenarios all over. We've got tweets and everything kind of flying into this. I just want to get your first blush on this. What are your thoughts on a major like Minecraft saying, hey, we don't think this is the route?
Yeah, as far as public sentiment goes, unfortunately, it's another red news feature on crypto gaming, right? The average person's going to see this and just be like, oh, yeah, you know, NFTs are a scam. You know, you see Minecraft banning it, Steam banning NFT games, the Axie Infinity hack. You know, those things make the mainstream news, unfortunately, whenever people deflect that technology. But truly, I think it's just Microsoft, aka Minecraft, really. Microsoft is behind Minecraft. They're just deflecting the inevitable, in my opinion. I actually think that it's one of those disruptive technologies that we've seen over time, like the .com wave. I just think, continuously speaking, that it's just another one of those social media type things with NFTs and games, and they probably want to hold that off as much as possible for their business model to continue how it has been.
Yeah. I was looking at their policy on Minecraft.net. It says we outline our server owner can change for access. All players should have access to the same functionality. NFTs, however, can create models of scarcity and exclusion that conflict with our guidelines in the spirit of Minecraft. So, to me, that kind of pointed in the direction of some exclusion issues, which I think in general gaming is trying to not go that direction. But at the same time, they did some things that kind of all really kind of go against that grain, and I'll talk about that in a second. But when you look at that, even just in the general, the general aspect of what is an NFT, this is right here from their own website. So I'm just not sure. And there's been several tweets talking about, did they really even outline and understand what a full NFT use case could be for a game like this? So I think I'm curious if people are asleep at the wheel over there, because I feel like we've seen this picture before. If you know Microsoft, you also know that Bill Gates was one of the guys that actually said the internet was a fad. There was a time that actually happened. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for sure. Here's the tweet from Giancarlo. He basically broke it down like this. Microsoft also implies that they're doing this to protect kids. And they should simply stick to a more family-friendly virtual currency like Mine Coins, which is, listen, I have 2 young children, and I feel like it's just a cash machine. Ching. What's going on here, man?
Yeah, and even growing up, I've lived in that era, with Call of Duty map packs, DLCs, downloadable content is what they're called.
Yep.
I would go ask my mom for the credit card when I was 14 years old all the freaking time because, I needed to download the latest thing to keep playing with my friends. And it is just insane that they still justify these in-game currencies in Web 2 games that you're just really just paying for. I guess you could, so to speak, you're paying for an experience, right? Inside of the ecosystem of the game,
Fair
I guess
enough.
is the way that they would have to try to term that. But at the end of the day, you're making an investment into the game that I feel like we all believe the in-game ownership and the assets that we acquire should be ours. And we should have the liberty to do what we want with them if we do end up not playing that game anymore. So, Minecraft's been around for so long. Imagine when someone does end up putting down the game, the inventory of items that they have could could be worth a lot of money. And it's unfortunate to see that these studios, they love to deflect the player's ability to have that at their hands. Like, you don't have to sell your assets, but if you want to, you have that potential to do so. And I think that this is the inclusive model, right? I know Microsoft in the announcement, they said that NFTs aren't inclusive. I actually think NFTs are the most inclusive technology you could put into a video game. I mean, you are actually at one with the game and you have a stake in the assets that you're earning. I think that's the most inclusive technology a game could implement, but that's just me.
Yeah. I was looking at just, this tweet right here by Minecraft. Your very own Steve with diamond armor and tools for the adventure ahead. Sounds something like an NFT to me. Check out the diamond level Steve figure from Mattel, now available to a limited 5,000. I mean, this just screams hypocrisy to me in the essence of, and also I think when we look at digital rights and what that's going to look like in the future, because I believe it's going to be coming to where people actually are going to have rights to all things digital, including their gameplay, including a lot of the activities that we do online in general that could be flowing into this. We're obviously, legislation and scenarios aren't there yet, but down the road, I think it's just a matter of coming. When you look at this tweet right here also, here's where things get weird. Minecraft had a controversial moment a month ago when they added a new moderation system that allowed them to ban people in private servers, and now private servers are maintained and paid for by individuals. Players thought they were actually owned by them. So again, more stuff that kind of shows a little bit of side speak coming out of these game companies. Do you think this is just a scenario that these big game platforms, they just don't have a strategy set in place, so they're trying to defend right now while they can until a strategy gets into a potential where they can actually, work from it?
Yeah, in this instance, I think 100% that's the case, actually. If you go back, you could find probably an article on it that Microsoft recently had acquired Activision for $69 billion.
Yep.
Activision is over games like World of Warcraft and Call of Duty, for example. So massive franchises. In the press release, Microsoft CEO mentioned that this is a play for their Metaverse acquisition in the future. They mentioned that this is all a part of their Metaverse movement in the future. So that was a very curious thing for them to include into their statement because, what they clearly know about the technology. And I do believe we're going to see all these big companies, the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Apples, eventually come over to Web3, Metaverse, etc., and follow that meta trend. I definitely see that happening. And I see it happening with the game studios too. I know Epic Games is going to take advantage of a lot of this first movement on NFT games, for example. And I think Microsoft has a plan for NFTs into their games later on. But I just think that right now, as you mentioned, they're probably under strategized and they're not ready. That was probably a multi-year plan to be able to integrate NFTs in their first video game. So I do think it's a deflection so that way no one else can monetize it while they don't have a plan.
Yeah, I've been in these meetings with major brands before, Fortune 500. There's a lot of strategies that are put forth in how they do press releases and also how they do product releases. In many cases, some of these product releases are actually intended to cause scenarios like what we're seeing right now, which is a lot of media to begin talking about it, creating sort of a fanfare around it. People are starting to want to look in and kind of see what's happening. And then it opens up the gateway for something to do, which is more from a strategy front that usually is 2 to 3 chess moves ahead. And I'll assume that that's kind of where Microsoft is going with this. If you look at this story right here, Epic Games obviously is not following suit here. With Epic coming in and kind of embracing, I won't say embracing fully, but at least looking at the NFT space and gaming in a shift that we're dealing with right now, potentially going into blockchain gaming, really seeing a lot of moves. Do you think Epic could be the star for blockchain gaming to come out of the traditional studios?
Yeah, as far as distribution platforms go, 100%. I know that their Epic Game Store has 1 million plus users and like hundreds of thousands daily concurrent members. So very high activity. They release games on there. Like famously, they released Fortnite, but they are releasing blockchain games coming up. Grit, the battle royale game from Gala Games, for example. Blanco's Block Party, which is kind of one of those. It's been around for a while and it's starting to get the love that it kind of deserves as far as gameplay goes. It's like the Web3 version of Fall Guys. But Epic Game Store has so many hit titles and there are so many users on there, there will not have been a platform that an NFT game was launched on that is bigger than Epic Games. So I think that they are clear cut the favorite at the moment as far as the Web 2, whether you want to call them a studio or a distribution platform like a Steam, that they're definitely positioned to be those first movers. Ubisoft fumbled their chance. So if Epic Game Store comes in and really nails this, I could see them as, that kind of a hero in the Web3 sense that kind of sees the technology developing and actually brings it to the masses in a way, because there's no harm on Epic Games to put grit on their platform. It's your choice if you want to download the game. They're just simply putting it in front of their audience. So that's good to see that they're willing to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I was looking at this statement here. Developers should be free to decide how to build their games, and you're free to decide how to play them. I believe stores and operating systems makers shouldn't interfere by forcing their views on others. Obviously, they definitely are planning to go in the direction of much more freedom, I think. And at some point, I think we will see a little bit of a tipping point in the essence of blockchain gaming and traditional gaming kind of merging together. And it will be some gamers out there that are true, we'll call them native gamers in the sense that they want to just play for fun. And I completely get that. And then you're going to have an element that is in there going, hey, I want collectibles that are worth something down the road. I want to start developing an NFT stable. And I want to look at all the money that I'm spending into this, that at least it's got some sort of value in the future. So I definitely like Epic's approach on this. This was here, Yat Siu from Animoca Brands. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people now. Granted, Animoca Brands, leader in terms of investing and backing a lot of blockchain gaming. So Yat Siu, he kind of has to come out. The CEO of Animoca Brands, he kind of has to come out and position this way because he is looking at it. So kind of take it with a grain of salt. But for him making that statement, it's pretty significant.
Definitely. And Yat Siu, I mean, he's one of the brightest minds in Web3 gaming, and his background, he knows trends. He knows what good games are and games that are going to capture the attention of a market. So it's good to have another mind in the space that is behind the biggest and probably most successful at this point gaming venture capitalist out there in Animoca Brands and some of the products that they've put to market at this point. So I definitely think that it actually benefits one of their subsidiaries in Sandbox as well.
Yep. Sandbox. We'll talk about that in a minute. Here's a statement from him. General perspective is that this is hypocritical. NFTs have not hurt anyone at Minecraft. It's very clearly a minority. This was not a decision of actual evidence of harm. This was a preference decision purely based on opinion. So I think this is a challenge. He even stressed that excluding minority views means you actually hurt the whole community, and it does stifle growth. That's the other concern that I have, is when you look at the evolution of new technology and especially new methodology, because we're talking about an existing $1 trillion industry out here with gaming. When you see new methodology coming about in a really kind of in a technology basis that's been around for quite some time, the opportunity for growth and to stimulate all sorts of new companies, innovation, all those kind of things, to me, we're right here, right now. And to get this kind of statement coming in from Minecraft and Microsoft is, it's kind of a little disappointing, because I really think they're the ones that should be stimulating developer growth and help us create the next Minecraft, all those kinds of things that are going to really lead into the Gen Z and the millennials. What are your thoughts on future gamers?
Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on
future
gamers?
Future gamers, yeah. I think that NFTs are going to be an integral part of the future of gaming, and that's in all trueness, because I think we mentioned this briefly last time I was on the show, but as of now, the microtransaction model, while the gaming studios, they make a lot of profits and revenue off of the single touch point that they have with the consumer. They could actually just put the same microtransactions on the stores, just like battle passes and exclusive skins that we see Fortnite, Warzone, Valorant, CSGO, all these games go with. And that's their whole revenue model. But the thing is they could have a second, third, fourth touch point on these assets if they were to open up a marketplace inside the game where you can simply sell your items and they take a fee just like OpenSea. So I think that the revenue model actually would give more revenue to these games, who would allow players to trade assets that are no longer sold by the game. So Battle Pass Season 1 is going to have higher rarity whenever it's Season 5, and you can't get that Battle Pass anymore. So those items will not be being sold by the company anymore. The customers, or the players, their customer base, technically speaking, in a business sense, they're out there being able to resell it, and they take a fee off of it. I think that that's a model that they're underselling the potential of, because then it creates multiple touch points for the same items that you've already made revenue on.
Yeah, and I think at some point this is going to come to the overall game maker strategy in this, in the essence of, if whether you're building economies within games or you're looking at strategic sales and the infrastructure that you need to generate revenue. I mean, that's really what this is about. At some point in time, those guys are, I think they will come to kind of reality. I was looking at this tweet here from Sebastian Bourget, who's obviously the CEO and founder over at Sandbox. Why decentralization matters, Web3. Minecraft is shamelessly killed an ecosystem of creators. How can they say this is inclusive while destroying innovation and depriving others? And again, now, granted, Sandbox uniqueness, does this potentially harm Sandbox in terms of their strategy moving forward?
So I think that the Minecraft NFT ban, especially in the short to mid-term, and who knows, it depends on what you consider long-term. If 3 years is long-term, we might not see Minecraft move towards NFTs for 3 to 5 years, considering their success rate as just a pure Web 2 game. And we just saw that they're still selling these currencies and collectibles inside the game, just like NFTs. But, you know, gamers would understand it more if you just called them in-game collectibles. In my opinion, people would accept the NFT side of things. But for Sandbox, at least short to mid-term, depending on, like I said, what people would consider as long-term, definitely benefits them. They are, so to speak, the Minecraft of the NFT world, and they're not infringing on anyone else's project. It's solely theirs. They've built this out since the beginning with top-tier partnerships. I do truly believe that this is a major benefit for Sandbox, because now, if there is those players who want an NFT experience while having that same capability that Minecraft provided them, they're going to look towards the Sandbox for now, because there's nothing else like Minecraft, in my opinion, across the entire blockchain.
Yeah, and I think it shows this whole scenario around these walled gardens that have been out there for quite some time. We've seen this process before. We've seen it in, you know, the initial Web 1 era. We saw that, you know, all the way up from, you know, dating myself all the way back to AOL. I mean, essentially that was what created a lot of the growth. Now, granted, this is a different era now, especially with gaming, because there are so many great studios that have massive followings. And there's, I would say, when you think about it, could be 50 plus really AAA studio games that are significant enough to really drive a following forward. So at some point, whether it's Epic or others, we're going to start to see, I think, these guys following suit into the metaverse and NFTs.
I would almost be willing to say, I would almost be willing to say that there's AAA studios developing an NFT game right now with the plans to launch in 2025. They're just stealth. It's all stealth under the radar at the moment. I would be willing to put money on that fact.
Yeah, and you know they have to be saying, "Oh no, we're not doing that." No, because that's just playing your hand to your competitor, or you're putting out, you know, press bombs that says, "Hey, things like this right here could be something else under the hood here." Obviously, NFT Worlds gets decimated by this. What do you think is going to happen? They're talking about doing their own game now. I was looking at their token. It's not funny, but their token right here, literally just off the charts, right into oblivion, it feels like. Do you think they can come out with an alternative in terms of a game that would be something that could possibly rally them?
You know, I'm very neutral on the project. What I will say that would worry me and concern me is, were they prepared for this? You know what I mean? Were they prepared for them to all of a sudden have to pull out of their treasury and from their bag of tricks to have to build their own game? I don't know if they're ready for that. I don't know what the timeline would realistically be. And, you know, are these guys game developers, or were they just capitalizing on putting NFTs into Minecraft? So that would be my major questions. Like I said, I have no, I'm very neutral on the project. I'm not an investor, nothing like that. It's just I'm very curious if they were prepared for something like this, because they could have seen it coming with the infringement or IP, utilizing NFTs in a product like that. You could totally see Microsoft and Minecraft shutting that down. But I'm just curious if this was something that they really were planning for a while, or they're just pulling it out of a hat that they're going to build a game.
Well, I think it's got to be some sort of reactive. Again, I don't know enough about NFT Worlds and the team behind it, especially on the dev side,
Right.
to know if they've got gaming chops to be able to take on something like that. Plus, to me, it's, and you guys know, if you're watching our show, you know how hard gaming is, much less being able to get to a true developer level to create and release something that is quality, at least in the world of blockchain, what we see that is really kind of showcasing right now. It's going to take some time to really kind of build something like that. So I just don't know, unless
Agreed.
it was a default plan all along. And if they have some smart people over there, you always have your backup plan. What
Right.
happens if, it's kind of like the dead man on the wheel kind of thing. I was looking at this headline right here: limited edition Minecraft NFTs now celebrate women, girls, and science. But again, this is limited edition, in the essence of showing this inclusive side, and this, of course, coming from NFT World. With that being kind of the whole scenario here, with this was Microsoft and Engine teaming up on this. When you look at something like that, doesn't that feel like it's kind of doublespeak in the sense of where Minecraft and Microsoft are coming from? I mean, there just has to be more to this story. I can't put my head into this, that they're doing this.
I think that it's the typical big corporate, someone's making money off of our IP, our product. Let's shut that down. And then on top of that, I agree with what you said earlier. I think that maybe Microsoft's just under strategized to go ahead and roll out NFTs in any of their products, and they don't want someone else capitalizing on it also in the meantime. So I think that it could be a combination of both of those.
This first Final Fantasy NFT, I want to jump to that story real quick. I want to show you something, and I think I have it up queued here. So when you look at this one right here, this is just a quick shot of this one. But when you look at something like this, and you understand kind of the evolution of where NFTs are going to be going, is there anything special that you think could identify, especially from the aspect of leading studios, that would kind of give you indicators that we're going to see some people starting to play in the NFT space? In other words, what would be some of the things you're watching for that says these guys could be next in terms of positive toward NFTs?
Definitely. I'm sure you heard about the Nickelodeon NFT drop last week. Nickelodeon did, I think it was Rugrats and Hey Arnold NFTs, and they did super well. They were rolled out to perfection. And I think that was the first true example, to me at least, of existing Web 2 entertainment classic IP that is actually, they come out with the utility that actually rolls it out correctly and doesn't get labeled as this flop of a project that doesn't mint out, for example. So the Nickelodeon collection's done very well in that regard. Already 1.6K in ETH trading volume, and this is like the first week that it's been launched. So I think when you take a look at that big picture, Nintendo has shown interest in the metaverse, right? So imagine Mario, Luigi, Bowser, Princess Peach, Wario, all those classic characters. Sure. And potentially the Links, the Zeldas, all the different games on their IP, they could bring over to the NFT gaming side, and I think be one of the leaders in the space. I would play Super Smash Bros. On the blockchain, right? So I think that definitely there's a lot of potential here. Final Fantasy does carry a lot of weight, as far as I believe, back in the day, some of their games were also associated with the Disney brand, and Disney had a hand in the development of the Final Fantasy games at some point. So I think that it could definitely resonate with Web 2 players to come check it out if it is strictly Web 3 integrated. I think that would Final Fantasy be my bet to take it to the next level? Probably not. But I think that there is a lot of potential for brands like this with that nostalgia factor to take advantage of this for sure.
Yeah, I just think there's so much IP out there right now that has, evolved from Web 1, Web 2, kind of what we've seen with the integration. If you look back at the evolution of Mario, or any of the 1980s games, which were really the console games and the big arcade games, that really birthed the industry, I feel like, because that was my era. So I got a chance to
Right.
see those and play with those. Now I get to relive all that kind of fun with my kids. So it's really fun. I want to jump to Sony flip-flopping. PlayStation Star Rewards, definitely not NFTs. This is what Sony is kind of stating. They go on to point in here is that these are digital collectibles. So an offer were absolutely not related to controversial NFTs. And again, do you think they're kind of doing this because of pressure from the community? Strategic? Again, I feel there's a lot of chess playing right now with these game companies.
I think that it's the scared aspect of, first of all, calling it an NFT is risky for any of these brands. We've seen a lot of negativity come from that. Just people, gamers hear NFTs, they're out. So I think there's hesitancy to. Yeah, exactly. And I do think that we need to term something new for the gamers to understand what a NFT actually is when it comes to a game, right? We don't have to we don't have to over complicate things for the Web 2 gamer. It should just be an in-game collectible or something of that matter. I know what did they call it there? Asset or like exclusive collectible or something like that. I think just an in-game collectible, that's the way you need to term it to a player because they know what that means. It's something that lies within your inventory that you've worked for or that you paid for that technically should be yours. So I just think that this is just one of those PR things, in my opinion, where they don't want to call it an NFT, but this is one of those examples. It's pretty close, like the way that they're rolling it out, it's pretty close to an NFT system.
Yeah, very similar. I noticed this story right here. Sony and Theta Labs, of course, launch a 3D NFT that you can almost touch. Of course, this kind of goes into the whole point of Sony flip-flopping. So they are working with companies to initiate NFT strategies. They see the writing on the wall, so it's not going to be long before I think the integration really starts to go out mainstream. Have you looked at any of what Sony is doing with Theta Labs?
I haven't looked too deep into it. I feel I saw that news come out, but it was one of those headlines. I feel like that I just haven't seen much ever since the announcement that they were working together. But I think that could be big, obviously, if there's ever some sort of integration into Sony technologies with Theta's streaming platform. Just thinking on my toes here as some of the potentials there. If the gaming consoles of the future, like a PlayStation 5 or whenever the 6 comes out or what's ever next in the next 5 to 10 years, if Theta is one of the apps that you can download on the PlayStation to watch your streams, just like a Twitch stream, that could be very good for mass adoption as far as Web3 game streaming.
Yeah, and you look at use cases, because use case is going to be the kind of the killer app of the future, especially in Web3 and what we'll see out there. AMC, Sony offering NFTs to people who purchase the advanced Spider-Man tickets. So again, this gets into integration of in real life activities such as movie going, etc. It seems like AMC is really leading the charge here. When it comes to retailers, I feel like AMC has kind of put themselves in a position where they're getting very savvy in the idea of integration of NFTs into entertainment. Where do you see this going down the road? Because obviously Sony Pictures has a lot to do with this in the future, plus many other studios that could be kind of going in this direction. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think as far as these aren't the type of NFTs that people will be reselling on marketplaces, in my opinion, unless the one example I could think of would be in a sports sense. Your favorite team goes to the Super Bowl, but you didn't go to that Super Bowl. Let's say I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and in '95, the Super Bowl ticket is now worth X amount of money just because it's old and classic, and it's the Dallas Cowboys' last Super Bowl. So I think that whenever you look at that aspect of things, there could be resale on those classic type of tickets per se. But I think that it's more just verification that it's more confirmation and verification of things and events that you've attended over history. Anyone can buy something off of eBay. Anyone can pick a ticket out of the trash after the game when they're filing out of the stadium and they're empty in their pockets, for example. So I think that it's just a way to show that you've attended something, and it's not one of those NFTs that'll get a lot of crazy resale though.
Yeah, those are the collectible side of things, and I think those could evolve into other aspects down the road, especially from the essence. If you watch about what's happening with Vivi, the opening up of that marketplace, I think we'll see, some opportunities where collectibles could be worth money. Obviously, the ability of what's happening there on Vivi. I think this is going to be interesting to just see in general. when you look at, this is a bigger question. I want to bring it up for another show to you, but I'm looking at both what's happening within the VV ecosystem, and then if you look at just what's happening over on OpenSea, and if you think about kind of the future of NFTs, 3-4 years from now, OpenSea, VV, any way you would be leaning in terms of the marketplace?
Question. Very tough. One thing I'll say, the VV community is like the Cardano and XRP armies.
They're rabid.
They're very.
I'm telling you, they're rabid.
If you are a VV supporter, you are heavy VV. I know that for a fact. Their community's there. I can tell you the OpenSea sentiment is not that way. OpenSea's community is more like fix things, not supportive. So as far as that goes, the IP that's on VV, I could definitely see them having that market share in the future. I think that the drops just need to have more integrate. Like, I feel like their drops, whenever they've done their massive IP drops so far, I know they're partnered with a lot of top tier IP. They've just kind of been not publicized to the right extent, and they're clearly launching successfully because they're doing a lot of these collections. So I think if they just got a little more of the limelight, like the Nickelodeon NFTs did last week, whenever they did launch that IP very well, I think they're just lacking the credit where it's due publicly. I think that they could have a market share. I think OpenSea is going to be king for a while, though.
Yeah, interesting stuff. All right, this is going to be fun. Make sure and smash the like button, guys. We're going to get into some questions for us just to kind of run at. We've got Lord Byron stating gamers hate NFTs. They're trying to navigate all of that. If you think of a timeline here, Hustle, 2 years, 5 years, what are your thoughts on this? Before we see traditional gamers going, okay, I see how it works now.
$1 million question. So I would say, I know earlier I said, I think that there's probably AAA studios, Web2 studios working on games for NFT integration down the line. But I'm thinking that's 2025-ish, to be honest. And I think that the player base and the sentiment could potentially be very divided up until that point, unless the metaverse kicks off quicker than we think, unless so many people for some reason adopt Sandbox and some upcoming games like Illuvium and Shrapnel, AAA first-person shooter type of project. So I think that there's a lot of games that could bring more players and market share, but I safely 2025 until we really start making that wave towards mainstream adoption, because it's going to take a while to curve that normal gamer's mentality away from NFTs being a scam. We're going to have products that prove that. So I would say 2025.
Yeah, I think retail will assist with that. I know we have a poll coming in right here. Let's take a look at what's on the poll. Here we go. Is Minecraft NFT ban good for Sandbox? Yes, no more competition and no FUD. I guess we didn't. Did we get a poll response there? We'll take a look. Anyway, that's the question. So make sure and give us your answer there. Other questions that could kind of roll into this. And one of those is when you look at just in general, the aspect of NFT types, whether you think about what's happening within the games themselves that are being developed, and then the potential use cases in retail, fashion, other aspects of business in general. You know, we've talked about it in the music industry. We'll start to see it more in entertainment. Is there any one category that you're watching more so than others outside of gaming, obviously?
Yeah, so outside of gaming, I think obviously music has the most intrigue. I think everyone kind of sees that, you know, if you own digital ownership in some sort of an album or a song, and the royalty potential that doesn't have to be divided from the artist to the record label and agents and stuff like that. They can just distribute it straight up between the consumer and the artist, right? And the consumer is two ways. It's the listeners who are going to listen to the song anyway, but it's just giving your fans, the people who believe in you most, actual stake in your work. So obviously music, but I'll go another side of things, because I think that this could really have there's a two-sided approach to this. I think that loyalty programs for Web2 fashion brands could be big with an NFT. You own an NFT and you get access to exclusive drops every season or something like that. But on top of that, when you buy a Rolex, you get a certificate of authentication. But what if you lose that? You know, a lot, that's a big deal when the papers are missing out of a Rolex. It'd be a lot easier if it's digitally transferable and it is the real thing that shows that you own it. So I think that that's a cool way to bring NFTs into the fashion world, is if whenever you buy a Rolex, not only you get that physical piece, but there is that digital stamp that says forever that that is an authentic piece.
Yeah, I think authenticity, especially in the luxury goods market, could be a big factor. I haven't seen any good execution of it just yet. I'm a big watch collector, so I love to I would love to see those kinds of scenarios play into it.
Yeah.
Authenticity, which could really kind of come back in. The interesting thing would be is if you do own the NFT and you were to sell the watch, would you get a little bit of the kickback on the backside of the NFT itself? Much like you would. I mean, that could also become part of the ecosystem for selling those things down the road. Not that I would say sell your Rolex, guys, because then you get, the
Yeah.
deal, you get blacklisted by the ADs. So let's go to the poll now. I think the guys have it up. You can never get back into the Rolex community if you sell one. All right. Minecraft NFT. Okay, here we go. Yes, no more competition. Okay. And then no, FUD for the industry. All right, so it's kind of a split here on this one, Jonny. But most people kind of leaning into what you said, and that is that Sandbox could be a big winner here for me. It just feels like this opens up the game for Sandbox to kind of take a much earlier lead. Now the question is, a lot of AAA guys are so big they could easily pour billions if they wanted to into this space in a short period of time and take over for sure. A couple of questions. Scott Herman Crypto. He kind of hits it on the head. That way they can, and this is kind of where you and I are looking at it as well. They can scare the public while giving themselves more time to catch up. So it goes back to that whole strategy point, I think, for sure. And then this is another one right here by All Chat Gaming. Content creators with education will choose NFTs. No brainer. Easy way for them to work with the world. You only need 1,000. Basically, this is getting back to something that many of us have talked about before. It's kind of all you need is a tribe, to really create successful NFT and or content. It's overall. Do you think this changes music in a big way for the emerging stars? Because that's something that's really being talked about right now.
Definitely. And especially when you talk about independent artists. So there's two artists go two avenues, right? A record label could really help get them in front of a wider audience, give them that reputation that like a Universal Music or a Republic Records could do for an artist that's up and coming. But at the same time, these indie artists, they don't join a label because they would like to monetize it all on their own. Kind of the Floyd Mayweather approach in boxing, where he ditched the agents and he just decided to be his own business. So that's kind of the indie artist approach. And NFTs definitely work well for that because you're going to get paid. Here's the thing, per listen, if it's an NFT, you're going to get paid more than Spotify pays you. Spotify pays these artists, even top tier artists, very little per click. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think long term, the runway would be great for artists.
I'm very bullish on that ecosystem really kind of evolving. Interesting statement here from our super chat. What are your thoughts on the Open Metaverse Alliance with Animoca Brands and Sandbox?
I think it's all player one of the metaverse, where one world, right? Where it's not all this, oh, you're going to choose to go over here, I'm going to choose to go over here type of thing. Because I don't see that playing out as a true that's not the true decentralized metaverse. The decentralized metaverse would be this open metaverse type of alliance as they have here. So I think that that's definitely something to look at. And if there's going to be someone that links all the dots together, it would be the people behind Animoca Brands and Sandbox as far as the industry goes today.
I definitely like the idea behind this, because I think in general we'll see a lot, because this is going to go much further than just gaming. We'll see this really kind of roll into all aspects of companies, B2B. This could really get into the next evolution of real business acumen for NFTs, which is, even though right now we're on entertainment, gaming, all those kind of things, which I think are the gateway for the future of how Metaverse and NFTs play out. But the real big money is coming down the line, and that will be when we see B2B, real estate, medical, all those kind of things going into this. Jonny, it's always fun jumping in with you. It feels like we just could go on for hours on these things. So I want to thank you so much again for stopping in on the show today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Always down to join and chop up Metaverse gaming and where we see this industry headed. So thanks as always.
Excellent. Thanks for stopping in. We appreciate it. Are you guys are listening in over on the podcast right now? Maybe you caught this after the live stream. That's okay. We understand how it is. You're busy, but the best thing to do is jump over here to the YouTube channel. Just hit like and subscribe. Hit the bell. You'll get notifications the next time we go live on these kind of topics and others, where we do a lot of breakdowns on traditional crypto, all that kind of stuff from our TechPath Crypto set. Make sure and hit me up out on Twitter. It is @Paul Barron. Of course, we'll catch you next time right here on Metaverse Insider.